Okay, folks, so I have wedged up two balls of clay. One is 3.5 pounds and the other one is 2.5. So you're going to be using a little bit more clay than you have with the cups and the mugs. And I've also spiral wedged these and already kind of like prepped them to be in cones, because I think anything you can do to kind of like speed up the centering process is great. And this is one way to do that. So go ahead and get my bat wet. I'm also throwing here on a bat. And centering this amount of clay is pretty similar to what you guys have already been doing. Some of you guys might find it actually easier because the larger amounts of clay, you know, the 2 to 4 pound range, you know, your hands, the scale of your hands might be a little bit better for that actually. So, so what I like to do, really kind of like force in my left arm here. And I'm gonna take my right hand, I'm gonna squeeze that in over here around 2 or 3 o'clock actually. I'm working here at the base. I'm gonna try to like force that clay up. And notice that I'll speed up the wheel when I'm really applying that pressure. I'm always keeping it wet. So now I've got a lot taller of a much taller cone, right, than your cups and mugs. So this one, you know, I really will usually like take my right hand and I press down into it. So you're gonna see this in the video. It really gets a nice kind of like lean to it. Really push into it. My left hand, I got my right hand over top of my left, just like this. My left hand is just kind of holding firm here on the side. My right hand just pushing down, and I'm pressing down and away here at like 6 o'clock, right? Pressing towards 12 o'clock. So that was just one up and down. I'll do it one more time. And then I'll sometimes just squeeze down here on the back side. Pretty close. All right, close counts. All right, so creating the hole or the well, and it's just like any other. I like to keep my thumbs together for this. And I'm gonna apply a little bit of pressure here at the top. I'll pause, add a little water to that. And then you go down a little bit further. Now with the bowls, I usually will leave, I'd say probably at least a ½ inch of clay at the base. Because I personally like to carve kind of a tall foot rim on my bowls. So I'll leave a good ½ inch. So let's see what that looks like. A little on the tall side, but let's see. So let's stop my wheel. Yeah, that's about ½ inch, 5/8. So that's where I'm going to leave it for now. All right, so I have the well. Now this is where it's really important to kind of like follow this part of it to get a really nice, you know, open bowl. I think it's real important to make sure that you have your right hand here at 3 o'clock. Okay, and again, this is just for righties. Lefties, you're going to be opposite. But my left hand, my middle 2 fingers are going to be resting right here between my thumb and my index finger. My index finger is over top of my other index finger. I'm going to really push over here towards 3 o'clock and really open this up. Okay, I like that flat bottom. Now I can get a lot of tools inside of here, my entire sponge. But one thing that you're going to want to do is really compress the floor here. Anytime you're making something that's much more open, and say like your cups and your mugs, it's real important that you compress that floor. If you don't compress the floor, what might happen? S-crack, yeah, that's right. So what I'm doing here, if you guys can kind of see, I'm taking my sponge and I'm pressing down real firmly here with my middle 2 fingers, and I'm going from the very middle out towards 3 o'clock, and I go back and forth. And that's really compressing the bottom here, the floor of the bowl. Then from here, you know, it's a pretty good size, pretty good amount of clay. So I can actually make a really nice, probably ramen bowl in this amount of clay. So working just like I have before, left hand inside, right hand on the outside. I'm holding my sponge. I'm going to slow the wheel down just a little bit, but I'm going to make sure that my hands are in contact with one another, because once I start to really pull these walls up, and I'm going to pull it up kind of like a cylinder, kind of like a wide cylinder. It's going to get big enough to where like I can't actually be in contact with my inside and outside hand if I start to make them much larger, right? So then your hands are going to have to work independently of one another. But it's good that if you can have them in contact with one another while you're throwing lower amounts of clay, you tend to like be able to remember, well, your muscle memory, your hands will kind of just get accustomed to like moving at the same time, right? And it's real important. One thing I've kind of not mentioned too much is that your inside hand might drop down versus your outside hand when you're making the bowls. That way you're actually able to make larger, wider pieces. Whereas when we're making like taller cylinders, you want your inside hand actually above your outside hand. When I get to the top, release that pressure a little bit. I'm going to compress that rim. It's also really important that you compress the rims and not just the floor, because these rims are likely to crack because they're going to dry much faster than the clay down here, just because it's going to get a lot more air. So this is a nice size bowl. I can go a little thinner with it, but I don't want to go too thin. I like to use this rib. It's probably my favorite one for bowls. So I'm going to apply pressure here in the base, and I'm also going to just push out with it a little bit, because I like to have a nice, easy transition between the floor and the wall. Like that little area, right where between the flat and the curved walls. I like to be able to like scoop with my spoon anything that's in there. So I'll apply a little bit of pressure there. And I can also use this on the outside. That's a little dry, a little water to it. Now at the rim, I'm going to compress that one more time. Send this water out. We're going to actually just hold this in just ever so slightly. That's good. And then what I like to do with the rims, I'm going to take my rib, I'll just ever so slightly pinch the top here. I'm going to angle this down a little bit and push down to compress that rim. And slow the wheel down while I'm doing this. This helps set that rim. It compresses it, firms it up, and it also acts, if I do it at the right angle, it will help, keep any of the fluids or whatever, soup, whatever, inside of the bowl, right? It's also a good method, like a lot of these bowls, I'm whisking eggs in often, and if you're like whisking something inside here, just the interior wall here, if it curves up and then in a little bit, it helps catch everything as you're like whisking. So that's a simple bowl. I'm gonna trim just a little bit off. Right tool. Okay, here it is. Use the sharp end here of the elbow. Just take a little bit off here. Get rid of that. Wire this off. If you're working on bats, it's still important to wire underneath the pieces, otherwise sometimes they'll get stuck and you'll get some cracking. So that's just really basic. See how fast that was, just to make a regular bowl? Now I've got a little bit less clay over here. I'm gonna show you one other method to make more of like a sharp, flat-sided bowl. So this is 2.5 pounds, so it's a little smaller. So this might be a good starting point. We have kitchen scales over on the wedging table. One other thing, as I'm thinking about it, what I kind of skipped over with this piece, I didn't talk too much about the speed. Once I actually start throwing it, you guys all know what centrifugal force is, right? So the further away from center something is spinning, the faster it's spinning, right? So one thing that you're gonna find is when you're making these bowls, they're much wider than the cups and cylinders that you've made so far. So you'll definitely want to slow your speed down a little bit as you're pulling your rolls up, okay? This one's a little lumpier. I don't know if you guys have thrown with the B-Mix, but it's a lot smoother than you're running stout. That's centered. This one's going to be a little different style. So I'm actually making a really wide open cylinder. You can press that. Some of you might find as you're throwing your bowls that you might have like a little volcano, a little mountain start to grow here in the middle. You can just press that down. You might also find that you just really like those throw rings. So, all right, so now what I'm gonna do is I will go straight up with this. It's like a little crock pot. And I want to make sure that I leave the top of this a little on the thick side. It's still nice and thick. Get it a little straighter. Now, I'm going to take my elbow tool. I'm going to stick the rounded end right here at the base of where that wall meets the floor, okay? And then I'm going to just kind of lay this down and open this up. This could be a bowl on its own, right? It's totally a great form. Now I'm going to take this, I'm going to hold it like really firmly with both hands. I'm going to make something a little bit more straight. Now when I'm doing this, it really stretches out the top of the bowl. So see how easy and quick that was? It's just a simple cylinder, right? Kind of a thick cylinder, and you just lay your tool down. It's a really nice way of just creating a nice open bowl. Just fix the interior a little bit. Just compressing. When I say fix it, I just want to compress any of the lumps that are on the floor here. Compress the rim. These rims, definitely, since they're kind of stretched out from the method of forming, definitely want to compress those. So I'm just pinching it ever so slightly and pressing down with my right index finger. Okay, so that's 2 style bowls. Monday, I'll demo double wall bowls, and Joe's gonna demo just regular bowls.
So it's a Japanese production tool that's really fun to use. Similar to what he just showed, but it's called a house cone.
So I will let this sit on my shelf, let it get some air for for an hour or two. I'll cover it up and then come back like the next day or a few days later. If you're not able to trim them right away, definitely make sure you cover them up. And then I'll actually flip them over and let the base of it get a little bit more air. You can sit outside in the sun, and then I'll trim them after that. So, but you gotta be careful. You don't want to like damage these now. So be careful whenever you're covering them up that you actually don't apply too much pressure to the rims because they're gonna really want to collapse. Okay. Another thing to take note of, if you cantilever your walls too far out, they could collapse. So be careful with that. But other than that, have some fun. 5 bowls. The deadline is on the syllabus. I'll have to check on that for you. Yeah, all right, you can press stop.